Just a Bit of Bread by Neon Zangetsu Chapter 3, Butting Heads. You were merciful. Why? I wouldn't call that beating merciful. He still lives. That in itself implies mercy. Alright, that settles it. You need some friends, Adam. I have no need of such, and you're not going to let this go, are you? Bah, I've converted my worst enemies into the best of friends. Now, sit down. Adam and Naruto, butting heads. And so it went. Evening came with brutal swiftness, leaving Naruto and Emerald cramped into the auditorium with the rest of the aspiring applicants as they awaited the dawn. It hadn't been quite so bad in the beginning. Sure, they were all forced to give their weapons and store them away in lockers, but that was merely a formality for those who had come this far. Naruto wanted to hope that things would only get better from here. When you started at the bottom, there was nowhere left to go but up. Right? He'd wholeheartedly believed that. That is, until Coco hunted them down. Gods, the girl had a nose like a bloodhound. Looking good, Whiskers. Naruto didn't yelp when she slapped his arse. The impact shuddering right through his black and orange pajamas. He absolutely did not yelp. Yelping implied weakness. Weakness meant fear. Fear lent credence to the theory that he was afraid of the unholy, unfiltered, caffeinated terror known as Coco Adele, which he wasn't, not at all. His tail, now wrapped tight around his waist to stay well out of her grasp, did not quiver with fear when she started to lay her sleeping bag next to his. Nope, not in the least. His legs weren't shaking from fear. It was excitement. Yes, that was it. Because he was so excited to be here. Not afraid. Not at all. Oh, who was he kidding? The girl was voracious. Hey! Emerald swooped in as he tumbled back. Hands off! Oh, you got dibs on him, Mint? Coco planted a hand on her hip and lowered her shades. Even in pajamas, she still cut a taut figure in her nightwear, probably because she'd opted for a simple sleeveless black shirt and coffee-colored hot pants. For some reason, she was still wearing the damn beret and her sunglasses. Sunglasses at night? Who did that? Coco did. In her head, she decided that the four of them were going to be a team. Screw initiation, screw Osman, screw the test. It was a done thing. No objections. They tried to say otherwise, but the girl simply denied their denial. And oh gods, they just given Emerald a nickname. My name is Emerald. The girl's nose wrinkled in mild distaste. She didn't deny the claim. Yes, it is. And thy nickname shall be henceforth be Mint. Coco grinned, rocking back on her heels. Why Mint? The dark-skinned girl flung up her arms with a startled squawk. What about me looks minty? The dark-haired girl tilted her head. Well, your hair, of course. I thought it would be obvious. You all right there, Mint? Urgh. Naruto nimbly plucked his partner out of the air before she could claw Coco's eyes out. Then he pulled her down into his lap in a single fluid movement. Naturally, the little Hellcat fought him every step of the way, spitting and squirming and struggling for her freedom until he finally placed his hands on her shoulders and began to work his magic. Emerald's body turned to jelly beneath his palms, and her anger all but forgotten as she collapsed against him. It was just a simple back rub, nothing more, nothing less. But if there was one thing Emerald Sustrai valued in this world, it was these hands. What was it with women and massages? So, Coco drawled as she watched him contain Emerald. Where are you two from? Back here originally. Naruto supplied the answer easily enough. There was no harm in telling her that. We got out of there the first chance we could. So, Whiskers and Mint from Vacuo. She beamed, taking a seat across from them. Sounds like the title of a crime drama. She was just full of personality, this one. This is going to be a recurring theme with you, isn't it? Naruto fixed the brunette with a flat look over his partner's shoulders as Emerald wrinkled helplessly in his grasp. You just have to give everyone nicknames. The latter tried to speak, but her words turned to gibberish as he found a sensitive spot in her back. All that emerged was a pleasant purr. It's a little thing in life, Whiskers, Coco agreed. Speaking of which, she held out her arms. Me next. Risking a glance for his partner, Naruto found blazing red eyes gazing back. Nope, he very much valued his life. I don't think that's wise. Party pooper. When met with Coco, Emerald's choice of sleepwear was almost Tame by comparison, she'd chosen a baggy mint-colored shirt and a looser pair of black sweats. Naruto approved of her choice. Baggy clothes helped you hide weapons for days. Bakugo had taught them both many a harsh lesson when they were children, but if there was one that stuck with them, it was thus: always keep a weapon on you. Always. Part of the reason he chosen long sleeves tonight, in spite of the season, he tried not to think about what Emerald was hiding under her baggy clothes tonight. She'd crawled into his lap enough when they were little that he'd become inured to it. So long as he didn't overthink things, anything like that, and he was bound to get a knife in the groin. No, this wasn't Bakugo, and they couldn't go around shanking anyone who annoyed them. Not anymore. So when his friend made a quick slicing gesture across her throat, Naruto suddenly shook his head. Rather than make the gesture again, she threw her semblance at him, leaving his ears buzzing in the form of a small voice only he could hear. It was a far cry from telepathy, but it was an excellent way of conveying messages between them. Can I kill her? He shook his head harder. Please, just a little. She'll never know. Naruto forebore the urge to groan. And how do you plan to do that? Do what? Coco's shit-eating grin told all, and he realized he'd spoken aloud. Ugh, nothing. Naruto fought down a sigh. You do realize we might not be on the same team, right? Nothing certain yet. Once again, the brunette laughed his fears away. Don't you worry your little ears about that, Whiskers. Your family now. Might as well accept it. Is it too late to run away? Not a chance. Emerald hissed in his ear and clapped down on him. If I have to suffer, so do you. Naruto grimaced as he fought down the urge to bolt. There was a certain irony to be had in all things, and tonight's suffering was no exception. By rights, he and Emerald shouldn't be here. They'd gone through hell and back to forge their paperwork, with money and dubious uses of her semblance alike. Somehow said paperwork that had stood the test of time, which meant it had either gone through seamlessly, or the old headmaster hadn't bothered to glance at their paperworks before approving them and sending them on their way. And how likely was that? Really? Flailing, he looked around and grasped for a new subject. Ironically, he found it in someone's absence. Say, where did Velvet run off to? Coco blinked. I don't... Please, stop! Emerald swore. Velvet whimpered. Naruto sucked in a sharp breath through his teeth. At first, the trio genuinely didn't understand what they were looking at when they rounded on the sound, if only because you'd have to be an utter fool to even attempt something like this, least of all where everyone could see you. There were teachers watching, at least there should have been, but when they turned to look, they found no one beyond aspiring hunters and huntresses, each and every one of whom were presently staring at the singular spectacle before them. 7 words summed it up nicely for Naruto. Why is that bastard pulling her ears? That would be Cardin Winchester. Coco sighed, planting her face in a palm with a long-suffering sigh. Bigot raced it in all around asshat supreme. He's about a year younger than us, but his pop's been a big donor to Beacon for decades now. Her lips curled in a snarl as the large boy tugged harder on Velvet. Daddy Dearest probably leaned on the headmaster to get his baby boy admitted early. She paused, as though considering an ugly thought just then. Seems he brought some friends with him. Is that allowed? Officially? No. Technically, yes. Coco rubbed her ears together. Money talks, whispers. The more you have, the louder you can shout. She flicked her beret off and spun it on a finger as they looked on. Rumor has it he wasn't the only one who got bumped up a grade this year. Rumor has it we've got a celebrity among us. Aren't you going to do anything to help your friend? Nah. The beret flew in his face. Bun's got this. Just you wait. She's vicious in a fight. The pained whimper that followed sounded anything but vicious. Gods above, that sounded like it hurt. Emerald flicked Naruto the merest of glances. Her head tilted just so in the corner of his eye. Red eyes gleamed. Should I? Her semblance slipped between the two of them in a whisper only he could hear. I could stop him if you want me to. Naruto considered it. It would be the simplest things for her to unleash her semblance here. Carton and his cronies were well within range, and Emerald looked about as angry as he felt. No, worse than that, she wouldn't hold back. Hell, she'd probably scare the pants off the boys and end this without raising a fist. Velvet would surely be able to escape in the chaos that followed. It might even put a big dent in the brute's bullying, for a while at least, but it wouldn't stop. Not for good. That said, he didn't want to reveal the trump card for something like this. Stop it, Velvet whined. Naruto felt a muscle jump in his jaw. He knew the man's type. The moment Cardin thought he could get away with it, bam! This would start all over again with another victim, one they might not see, one they might not be able to help. Even now, a sea of faces stared at the scene, but none made any move to intervene. Naruto watched some of the more notable faces in turn, waiting to see if any would act. He saw an absolute giant of a man looming by the window, a mere slip of a girl who barely came up to the latter's chest, and a sinful beauty with dark hair. Oh, some of them grimaced at the girl's plight, but no one said a word. Not a word. No, in the end, he shook his head at his partner. Let me handle it. Emerald tumbled out of his lap and patted his knee, freeing him to move. Hey, wait! Coco grabbed at his wrist when he stood. Velvet's tough. She can handle herself. If your friend could handle herself. Naruto rounded on her with a hiss. She could have gotten away from him by now. Come on, just let him go already, will you? Emerald stiffened a yawn with the back of her hand. No one's going to help her if we don't. She's right. I'm not going to hurt Cardin. The blonde shook free with a growl. I'm just going to talk with him alone, loudly, repeatedly, with my fists. That's the same thing, Coco cried. Naruto didn't listen to whatever else she might have said. He was already away and across the room, ignoring any and all attempts to call him back. His vision tunneled as he stalked forward, adrenaline keen, his pulse up to a frantic pace, pulse pounding in his ears like the drums of a great hunt as he stalked towards the threat. His mind assessed the threat even as his fingernails sharpened into claws. Responding to his stress, his semblance began to twitch. For once, he didn't stamp it down. He unleashed it, and it surged through him like a wave of molten fire, tinging his blue eyes the faintest shade of scarlet. For a moment, his anger began to balk. Was he going too far? Maybe words would be enough. Maybe. I think the carpet matches the drapes. Cardin crowded the words with a bawdy laugh. Ha! Ha! Someone sneered back. Who knows? They all look alike, right? Nope. That did it. He chose violence. Loud, angry violence. Carter Winchester was a big fellow, standing a good head taller than most. Muscled enough to fill out those hideous red pajamas he wore. He'd fought bigger, even if this one wasn't alone. At least 3 others. Were they friends? Stood nearby the brute, each laughing with him at Velvet's plight. It made his blood boil. It made them enemies. 4 against 1. Naruto liked those odds. Made things even. He didn't have a plan. There was no need for one. No, wait. He told a lie. He did have a plan. Rip and tear. Velvet saw him coming with wide eyes. Her head still jerked painfully aside. Her ears perked in Cardin's grasp. Still, silent steps carried Naruto the last few feet as his right arm arched upright. Would you care to repeat that, you son of a bitch? And clamped down on Cardin's right shoulder. It took but a second to lay a mark there. Then he squeezed hard. Physical contact was all but required for Reaper's touch to take hold on someone. Just for flash, but a punch or a simple grab. So long as Naruto got a hold of someone with his hands and held on, they were his. It was like drinking a glass of water spiked with caffeine. You could take a sip or drink the whole thing. Whatever he took became his energy to be burned at his leisure. He could even wield his semblance in reverse and bleed energy he stockpiled right back into a victim to heal them. Left alone, it was a subtle, insidious semblance, like taking tiny drops from a puddle. But Cardin wasn't a puddle; he was a lake, and an aspiring huntsman at that. As such, he had energy to burn. Naruto didn't hold back, and the boy's face went ashen. Hey! Cardin flailed at him. Let go of me! 3 seconds. It took Cardin precisely that amount of time to bat his hand away and stumble to safety. More than enough. By then Naruto had all he needed and more. He'd already marked him. He couldn't simply knock this kid out in front of everyone, cathartic as that might be. No, that wouldn't do. Not at all. An example must be made. In Bakugo, the strong thrived and the weak died. Just the thought made his ears twitch. Let's see how Cardin liked being the weakling for a change. Russell Dove Sky. Perhaps realizing his peril, the brute jerked Velvet back as his friends, more of a posse really, came to his aid. Get a little of this, another freak. When she tried to lash out at him, he only pulled all the harder, drawing an angry hiss from the brunette. First a rabbit, now a fox. They're crawling out of the woodwork today. Show off. Emerald semblance enhanced voice buzzed in his head. Naruto shrugged in a way that would made Mercury proud. Sure enough, Cardin's boys crowded around him, one with blue hair, and the other plain bowl cut, and a third with a green mohawk of all things. He didn't bother to remember their names. They didn't matter, nor did their mob mentality. It was almost sad, really. Nobody cared if you were honest and Bakuo. If you could survive, you were welcome. Times like these almost made the White Fang seem like the... Oh, wait, they were talking to him, weren't they? He'd all but tuned them out. Nice tail, Blondie. Mohawk jerked and prodded his cheek. Naruto twitched. Must not kill. Not even a little. Ah, did the fox come to save the rabbit? The tugged at his ear. Huh, maybe he wants to eat her. Skies was the worst by far, beyond compare. Velvet kicked out at them. Just let go. Really? Naruto felt his mouth twitch into a smile. It wasn't a pleasant one. Really? We're using those cliched lines? Then he flickered. Cardin never saw him coming. He wasn't even aware of the mark Naruto had left on his shoulder until the blonde barreled into him from above. With his left hand, the blonde lashed out and brought 5 taunt fingers down on the wrist, holding Velvet captive. A brief targeted touch that caused the muscles there to spasm in a moment of weakness. Cardin jerked around and swiped at him with his free hand, but rather than waste the energies he'd acquired for himself, Naruto stepped into the larger boy's guard and thrust an open palm beneath the bully's chin. Cardin's head snapped back with an audible grunt, stunned by the blow and unable to maintain his fist, much less his footing. The boy finally lost his ironclad grip on Velvet's ear. Mission accomplished. With that, he no longer need held back. A right hook crashed into the collarless boy's chin and sent him tumbling backwards into his friends like a bowling ball. Somewhere behind him, Naruto heard Koko's scroll click as it took a picture. Strike! It almost made him smile until he realized Cardin's captive hadn't budged an inch. Velvet, what are you doing? Move! When she didn't react to his words, he swept his right arm out and grabbed his fellow faunus by the waist, holding her behind him. That snapped her out of it. The brunette didn't so much dart as she did tumble behind his back. He felt her firm fingers dig into his skin as she latched onto him, followed by the faintest weight as her chin came to rest on his shoulder and her arms wrapped around his chest. For a fleeting instant, her hair tickled his nose and he balked at her. No, she actually was using him as a human shield while she clung to him like some silly monkey. Oh gods, why were her pajamas so thin? Thanks. Don't thank me, Naruto hissed. Why didn't you fight back? Her ears drooped as she turned her head away. I didn't want to cause a scene. Movement danced in the corner of his vision. They're getting up. Let me handle this. Reluctantly, the rabbit did as she was bade and disengaged a few paces. You little shit! Cardin might have said something else as he clambered upright. His mouth certainly moved. Naruto didn't listen, trusting his instincts. Sure enough, the boy gave into his anger and rushed him like a bull. Sloppy. It was the work of an instant of a duck. A wild haymaker slipped into his guard and swept his legs. Cardin toppled like a tree. One of his allies, the Mohawk fellow, tried to flank him and received a bitter backhand for his efforts. Why did he think that would work? He was standing right there. Didn't they have any semblance of strategy? On your left, Emerald semblance buzzed in his ear. Sure enough, someone grabbed his tail. Naruto blew out a sigh. Really? Not so tough now, are ya? He drove a vicious mule kick into their groin without looking so much as looking backwards. Whoever it was, Sky perhaps, released him and toppled to the floor with a pitiful croak. 3 down, 1 to go. He found the final one trying to help Cardin up. Fair enough. Time to wrap this up. Sure, one of the teachers must have noticed the commotion by now. If they hadn't, they weren't doing a very good job. If Cardin was foolish enough to pick a fight after all that, he'd get every bit of what was coming to him. Clearing his throat, Naruto coughed but once. I'll say this one time. Cut the bullying. He spoke clearly and calmly, raising his voice to be heard as he approached his fellow applicant and his fallen friends. Do that, and I'll pretend this never happened. Bit of a white lie, that one, but Cardin didn't need to know what he was in for later. This doesn't need to escalate any further. Let's have bygones be bygones. He offered his hand in friendship. Cardin Winchester spat right in his face. Naruto twitched. Right then. You had your chance. Coco, Emerald, and Velvet watched in quiet silence. At what followed, their heads tilted near horizontal to follow each and every movement. Mercury sauntered over, saw the disaster, and paused to whistle softly. Damn, didn't know you could bend the human body that way. Looks painful. Coco snapped into the picture. I'll say. Naruto stopped back with sound enough, and aplomb, Velvet cradled in his arms like a princess of yore. If the latter made a quiet keening noise between her teeth, no one dared comment on it. If she looked absolutely fit to burst from embarrassment, they didn't dare speak of it. They didn't look at her face either. Her cheeks were just as red as her name before she buried her head in his chest. Nobody messes with our bunny. He'd only just set her down when Cardin called out at him. You're the one who escalated things, freak. We didn't do anything wrong. Is that so? Naruto stood and tilted his head as Coco wrapped her arms around Velvet with a dark growl. You started it when you started harassing my friend. Velvet perked up imperceptibly, ears standing at attention, bright eyes flitted back and forth. Friend? She was asking for it, Cardin shot back. That damn bunny bitch didn't know her place. The entire auditorium inhaled sharply. In hindsight, Naruto should have risen to the bait. He knew it was a bad idea from the start. He knew Cardin was just being a bigot and just trying to goad him into a fight. He should have taken the high road like a sensible person, let the words roll right off his back. But the moment that brute opened his mouth, the moment he said those words, something snapped. He'd given him an out, a chance to back down and save face, to make amends and improve himself as a person. And what had he done? Well, they'd all heard it, what he'd called poor, sweet, innocent Velvet. Oh! Naruto groaned the words out as he stalked forwards. Do my ears deceive me? You must have a death wish. Why, I think he does. Coco was only half a heartbeat behind him. I call dibs on the ugly one. They're all ugly. Emerald reluctantly followed. Idiots, both of you. Ugh, Velvet? Could a sleeping bag make a cracking sound? Hers just had. Somebody get a shovel. You want to throw down? Fine. Fine with us. Cardin started forward with a growl. His friends behind him. We're ready for round 2. There's 4 of us and three of you. Bunny bitch over there doesn't count. Velvet absolutely hissed, all traces of hesitation gone. You no good sleazy. Unfortunately, before Cardin could comprehend his imminent body peril courtesy of one a very angry bunny girl. A heavy pillow sailed across over her shoulder. It was a good shot, one through with the utmost accuracy and grace, raw speed and power personified. It struck him dead in the groin. All present parties blinked as his eyes crossed and his body bent double, and with a wheeze of a whimper, nearly everybody and more than a few girls collectively winced at the withering wheeze that flew from his lips. Cardin Winchester did not squeak. No, certainly not. He definitely didn't crumble in on himself and cry for his mother. Everyone must have imagined it. Thus did the heroic sacrifice a lone pillow bring an end to what had been shaping up to be a vicious brawl. Coco hadn't thrown it. Emerald certainly didn't. Velvet blinked, ears drooping. Naruto looked over his shoulder. Well, he coughed. Didn't see that one coming. Everyone followed his gaze. Soon enough, all eyes turned towards the perpetrator. At a glance, she looked to be an awkward little thing wrapped in a bronze pair of pajamas, still gangled and growling into her full height, her arm even now still overextended from what might as well have been a full-body javelin toss for all the force behind it. She'd thrown the entirety of her tiny frame into that single motion. Scarlet hair framed a pale face from which eyes of pure jade shone. Her eyes even now widened with mortification as she realized what she'd done. I'm sorry, she wailed, hands flailing to her face. He was just being so rude, and ah, shit. Sky coughed, his face gone pale. Is that freaking pure Nikos? Velvet whipped a pillow into his face, sending him sprawling. That drew everyone's attention to Cardin's remaining allies, suddenly far fewer in number and without their leader. Both boys were left quite vulnerable, just standing there. One of them made the rookie mistake of trying to retreat. He stepped backwards just an inch. It was like blood in the water, and everyone else were the sharks, all eyes cut towards them. Someone began to chuckle. What did you boys call that sweet girl? A voice like sin purred. Bitch, I believe it was. Naruto felt the beginning of a smile curl at the corner of his mouth as he looked towards the speaker. Bunny bitch, that was the phrase. She smiled sensually at him, and a shiver shot up his spine as she stepped forwards. Gods, that gown was red. Yes, that was what they said. Quite rude, don't you think? Well, was it hot in here or something? Still, they were in agreement on that. At least when that gorgeous woman in her dark hair and burning amber eyes hefted a pillow of her own, it triggered an avalanche in the auditorium. Dozens of hands suddenly swooped down, snatching up sleeping bags, pillows, anything that came easily to hand. Just like that, Russell and Dove measured retreat turned into a full-on rout. Alas, there was nowhere for them to run. The doors were quite locked, you see, and for some mysterious reason, their chaperone had yet to make an appearance. In the end, both boys were left flattened against the wall to await their fate. They had aura unlocked. They might survive. Might. To war! Coco cried. Mercy! One of the helpless mooks gulped. Naruto and Emerald exchanged a black look. Nope. And with that, all the pillows descended with singular fluffy fury. Of course, that just left all the applicants to turn their pillows upon one another. Truly, it was a battle for the ages. The great pillow fight night would be a night not soon forgot. But of course, the first rule of pillow fight goes without saying. You do not talk about pillow fight night. And previews. Oh ho ho! I'm up! Naruto bolted upright at the first nudge, but it was already too late. Coco's smile said it all. For once, he hadn't dreamed of that damn box. Was that a good thing? He wasn't certain it was. He soon saw why just about everyone in the auditorium was staring at them. Why are you in my sleeping bag? Emerald tucked her head into his arms. Had a nightmare? Oh, he didn't ask further. You do realize everyone is staring at us? Don't care. She yawned and buried her head further into his chest. Sleepy. Dibs! The little redhead squawked. What? I've decided. You're just too precious, so me and Em are claiming you. You're stuck with us now. Teach me, please, I'm begging you. Naruto's jaw clicked open. Carden, say what now? Adam gazed at the hand, half expecting it to bite. You can't be serious. Naruto beamed. Sure am. You said you were looking for someone, right? I'd like to help. Might as well give up, Emerald called from across lockers. There's no shaking him when he looks like this. Oh, I can think of one thing I'd like to see him shake. Coco! Drink up. We're celebrating. Naruto eyed the bottle like a wild beowulf. You're drunk. Where did you even find alcohol? Coco cackled in the background. Of course. Some team leader she was. Nice. Coco turned her head as she coughed, causing Mercury flinched at the sharp bark of laughter. Naruto isn't nice. He tolerates people, sure, even stands up for them, but there's a line you don't cross, and you're stomping all over it. She flicked her shades back up again, and those cold eyes were hidden by her glasses once more. Take my advice, hot chicks. Don't piss Whiskers off. He'll kill you. We need not be enemies. Cinder hummed softly, laying a palm against his cheek. I can be a very good friend, Naruto. Your skills could be useful. Stay down. No, not again. Never again. What in the... Are you insane? How are you still moving? Because there's no one else. Because I have to push forward. Naruto jolted to the right, and a flickering fist thundered into the side of the brute's head to send him spinning away. Even if my body breaks, his enemy's weapons slashed down and bounced off a shield. I pushed forward. He cartwheeled it out of the way and swept their legs. Even if my soul shatters, large arms crashed down on either side of his end, but the blonde staggered and surged onwards regardless. Push forward! His hand snaked out to seize his foe by the face, slamming him into the ground. I won't lose to anyone. Never again. End of chapter 3.